Hi all, welcome to the CA classroom. Today let's start with the Indian Contract Act 1872. Now, before we start with the act, let us understand few basic terms with the help of an example. Now, example number 1. Let's say A has invited his friend B for a birthday party. So, A had asked B to come to A's house at 7 p.m. for the birthday party, and B had also said yes, he will come to A's house for A's birthday party. This is one example. Example number 2. X had sold some goods to Y, and Y has to make payment of rupees 2000 rupees to X. This is example number 2. So, X had offered to sell some goods to Y. Y also wanted to buy these particular goods, so he has paid 2000 rupees to X. Now, in both the examples, X has offered B to come to A's birthday party, and B has accepted to come to his birthday party. And over here, X has sold some goods to Y, so he had offered to sell some goods to Y, and Y had accepted to buy these goods by making some payment. Normal examples. Now, here both A and B have entered into an agreement. Is it a written agreement? No. Orally, they have agreed with each other that B will come to A's house for a birthday party. In this example, again they have agreed among themselves that X will sell the goods to Y and Y will make the payment to X. Now, this agreement, let's say at 7 p.m. B does not go to the birthday party because he is busy with some other work, and can A now file a case or file a suit against B for not coming to the birthday party as they agreed earlier. So, look at the facts. A had made an offer to B to come to his birthday party. Second, B had agreed for the same. He had agreed for the same, meaning he had accepted the same. So, an offer is made and the same is accepted, and it becomes an agreement. Agreement among two or more parties. Similarly, in this example, X has made an offer to sell the goods to Y, and Y has accepted it, and hence we have an agreement. Now, the question here is, can A file a case against B because he agreed for something and he finally did not turn up for the birthday party? Answer is no. Why? This is an agreement where there is an offer and there is acceptance, but this is an agreement which is called a social agreement. Now, in this case, let's say X has made an offer to Y and Y has accepted the offer, and hence we have an agreement. Let's say after X selling the goods to Y, Y does not make the payment. Can X file a case against Y in the court for not making the payment? Answer is yes. So, this is also an agreement. This is also an agreement. Why is it that here I cannot file a case? Because this person has not done what he has promised. And why is it in the other case you can file a case? Let us understand this. Both cases we have understood what is an agreement. What is an agreement? Agreement, to have an agreement you need to have two elements. First, there has to be an offer, and the offer has to be accepted. Offer has to be accepted. This can be either oral or written. Now, for an agreement to be legally enforceable in the court, for you to file a case, for it to be legally enforceable, agreement, for it to be legally enforceable, only if an agreement can be legally enforceable, it becomes a contract. Only an agreement which can be legally enforceable becomes a contract. So, both are agreements, but only this agreement can be called a contract and this cannot be called a contract. Why? So, let's see now how an agreement becomes a contract. In the previous section, we had seen an agreement becomes a contract if it can be legally enforceable. Now, what the Act says is, the first case, the social agreement among two friends, is not legally enforceable. I did not enter into an agreement to legally enforce the agreement. What am I trying to say? The Act says, any agreement plus essential elements. There needs to be few essential elements which make an agreement a contract. So, you can write agreement plus essential elements become a contract. What is an agreement? There has to be an offer by one party. In the previous example, A had offered to B, X had offered to Y. And the offer has to be accepted. So, agreement should have an offer and the offer has to be accepted. Agreement plus essential elements become a contract. So, throughout your contract act, you will learn what are the essential elements of a valid contract. So, if an agreement does not have these essential elements, then agreement cannot become a contract. Agreement can become a contract only if there is essential elements. One of the essential elements of a valid contract is legally enforceable. Can the agreement be legally enforceable? Do you have an intention to make it legally enforceable? What are these essential elements? Now, what are these essential elements? Now, there are many essential elements which you will be learning in your unit 2 and 3 of the Contract Act in your foundation level. So, over the next course of few days, we will be learning what are these essential elements. So, what you need to understand now is, there is an agreement, and if agreement can satisfy all the essential elements, only then I can call it a contract. If any of the essential elements fail, then agreement will remain as an agreement and it will not become a contract. And if it is not a contract, it cannot be legally enforceable in the court. What are the essential elements? I have just listed down a few essential elements which we will come across in the subsequent discussions. 2 or more parties. Every agreement should have 2 or more parties, because I cannot enter into an agreement with myself. Agreement should have offer and acceptance. It is part of the definition of the agreement itself. So, one of the essential elements is offer and acceptance. Next is free consent, possibility of performance, lawful object and lawful consideration. Agreement should not be expressly declared as void, and few other essential elements. All these concepts we will be seeing it later. So, for now, what is the takeaway for you? Agreement plus essential element becomes a contract. Now, once a contract comes into picture, you need to understand what are the different types of contract. What are the different types of contracts? So, now let us discuss what are the different types of a contract. Now, let us discuss types of contracts, meaning how are contracts classified? Contracts can be classified on the basis of formation or creation, meaning how it got birth, how does a contract get its life. On the basis of performance, where it stands at the performance level, and on the basis of enforceability. Let's say we have a contract. X has sold a certain goods to Y and Y has made payment to X. This contract can be classified in this bucket and this bucket and this bucket. So one contract can be classified in all the three buckets. It does not mean once I classify a contract in the first bucket, I cannot classify it in the second or the third section. Now, what are the types of contract on the basis of creation or formation? First is express contract. What do you mean by express contract? Both the parties have expressly entered into a contract either orally or written. Let me give you a small example. You go to a shop and let's say you purchase a water bottle. You go to the shop, give him 20 rupees and he gives you a water bottle. You are asked for a water bottle, offered him for water bottle, and he had accepted the offer and sold the water bottle to you. So this is an express contract, express between both the parties. Second type of contract is an implied contract. What is an implied contract? Let's take a small example. You are walking on the road and you had to urgently go to the railway station. So you stopped a taxi and told him, please take me to the railway station, and immediately got into the taxi. The taxi driver also started driving and reached the railway station, which was about 7 kilometers away. After getting down the taxi, should you make the payment or should you not make the payment? You obviously have to make the payment. Can I argue by saying, no, we never agreed for any contract, we never had a contract that I will make a payment, I just got in and he went. This is called an implied contract, that your action by getting into the taxi is making an offer that you want to use the services of the taxi, and the taxi driver, by accepting and starting to drive to your respective location, has accepted your offer and the contract has come into life. So nobody has spoken here, implied by your actions, by my action and by the action of the taxi driver, a contract has come into life. Contract is created and hence you are bound to make the payment to the taxi driver. Third is quasi-contract. There is a separate chapter for quasi-contract. We will discuss what quasi-contract when we come over there. Last one is e-contracts. What do you mean by e-contracts? Any contract you enter online is an e-contract. You enter on contracts on Flipkart, Amazon for buying some products. Any contract entered online using e-mode is a e-contract. So to summarize, contract on the basis of formation are four types: express, implied, quasi and e-contract. Implied is also known as tacit contracts, TACID, tacit contracts. Now let us proceed to contracts on the basis of performance. Contracts on the basis of performance can be of two types: executed contract and executory contract. Executed and executory contract. What do you mean by executed contract? Both the parties have completed performing their obligation. What is an executory contract? Executory is further classified into unilateral or bilateral. Now, let's take a small example to understand these concepts. Let's say X has asked Y to come to X's house to paint his house. Y has accepted to paint, and the painting should take about 1 day. He just has to paint a few areas. So 1 day painting, for which he has to pay an amount of rupees 10,000 rupees. Now, let's assume Y has completed the painting and X has also made the payment. So both the parties have completed the performance. So it is an executed contract. Let's say X has made the payment but Y has still not started to paint. It is called a unilateral contract, where only one party among the two parties in a contract have performed the obligation. Here, X has performed this obligation by making the payment, but Y is still yet to perform his obligation. So, unilateral contract is a contract where one party's performance is still outstanding. What do you mean by bilateral contracts under executory contracts? Where both the parties X and Y, X also is still yet to make the payment, Y also has not started to paint the house. Both the performance of both the parties is pending, then it is called a bilateral contract. Now let us proceed to understand what are the contracts on the basis of enforceability. In the previous section, we have discussed about types of contract on the basis of formation and performance. Now let us see types of contract on the basis of enforceability. Let us first finish the first four types of contract. What is a valid contract? It is fairly simple. Any contract which satisfies all the essential elements of a valid contract. What are the essential elements? As we have already discussed, we have around 10 points there. There should be two or more parties. There should be an offer and acceptance. There should be free consent. All these are essential elements. We had seen all those points in the previous video. So this is a valid contract, a contract which is satisfying all the essential elements, a proper contract. What is a void contract? Void contract is a contract. Initially it was a valid contract and later it has become a void contract because of impossibility of performance. This is very important, guys, because of impossibility of performance. Let me give you a small example to understand this. Let's say with a tourism agency, you have booked a 15 days trip to visit entire Europe and you have paid them an amount of 2 lakh rupees. Now, let's say this plan was made, this agreement or the contract between you, call yourself X, and the tourism agency was made in Jan. For the trip to happen in the month of June. Now, currently, is it possible, let's say if we are in the month of June, is it possible to visit the location Europe in the month of June? No. Why? Because we have a pandemic going on now. It is impossible to execute this contract, so it becomes a void contract. Another example, a simpler example. Let's say Michael Jackson had decided to come to India and they had sold tickets on the Book My Show app 6 months before his journey to India, and he has sold around 1 lakh tickets and everybody had purchased the tickets. Concert was supposed to happen. Let's say 2 months before the concert, unfortunately Michael Jackson had passed away. Now, is it possible for this contract to be performed? No. 6 months back when I entered into the contract, it is called a valid contract. Today, because of impossibility of performance in both the examples, pandemic or death of Michael Jackson, contract cannot be performed, so it is called a void contract. What happens in a void contract? Any benefit obtained by one party should be returned to the other party. In this example, we would have paid money to Book My Show for booking the tickets. So Book My Show should now return the money back to the customers. Similarly, in this travel example, the tourism agency will refund the entire 2 lakhs to me because contract cannot be performed now. Next, what is a voidable contract? Voidable contract is a contract which is entered without free consent. Now, how does this name come? It is nothing but, if you add an A here, it becomes avoidable. So, voidable contract is a contract which can be avoided by one party. It can be avoided by one party. What do I mean by this? Let's say X and Y are two parties. X wanted to buy the house of Y. So X goes to Y's house and points a gun at him and says, sell your house to me for rupees 10. Practically, will anybody sell their house for rupees 10? No. But why did Y sell the house to X for rupees 10 by signing in the agreement? Because X pointed a gun towards him, Y was scared about his life. He was scared about his life. There was an element of coercion here, and hence Y had agreed for the contract. This contract is called a voidable contract, where one party, Y, has the right to avoid the contract at a future date. Lastly, what is an unenforceable contract? Unenforceable contract is a contract where some legal elements which are necessary for in the court of law to make the contract enforceable are missing. Let's say this contract by law is supposed to be in written form. Whenever you want to sell a house, you cannot orally sell your house. It has to be in written agreement. If the same agreement is not in written agreement, then it is an unenforceable contract. Let's say the witness has not signed or one of the parties has forgot to sign in one of the pages, then such contract becomes an unenforceable contract. Now let us proceed to understand what is a void agreement and an illegal agreement. In the previous section, we had seen the first 4 types of contracts based on enforceability. Now let's see the last 2 ones. One is void agreement and the next one is an illegal agreement. Let's take a small example to understand this. Let's say X is paying rupees 10 lakhs to Y and asking Y to kidnap Z. Now, this agreement has 2 or more parties. There is a valid consideration and it satisfies most of your essential elements of a valid contract. However, this agreement cannot become a valid contract because it is forbidden by law. Forbidden by law meaning these transactions are illegal in nature. The minute a particular transaction you enter between 2 parties is illegal, such an agreement becomes an illegal agreement. Tomorrow, if X pays Y 10 lakhs and Y does not kidnap Z, can X sue Y? Firstly, if X sues Y, both of them will go to jail. But technically, court will not accept this as a valid contract to be able to sue another party. This is an illegal agreement. What is a void agreement? Void agreement is an agreement where the agreement to become a contract we had discussed should satisfy all the essential elements of a contract. Where an agreement does not satisfy these essential elements, then such an agreement will be called a void agreement. Let's say agreement has no consideration, then it will be called a void agreement. Let's say I am entering into an agreement with a minor, then it will be a void agreement. Therefore, all illegal agreements are definitely a void agreement, but it is not necessary that all void agreements become an illegal agreement.